Good morning, everyone. It's last day vibes, excitement and sadness all at once. I just want to thank everyone for joining this morning's speaker series talk featuring Maurice Cherry, who's going to talk to us this morning about designing at the end of the world, which is very pertinent. My name is NMAAHC, and I'm the chair for the School of Design here at George Brown College, and I'd like to welcome you to this morning's talk. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that George Brown College is situated on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and other Indigenous people who have lived here over time. We're grateful to share this land as treaty people who learn, work, and live in community with each other. Across the School of Design, we remain committed to identifying and removing systemic barriers to accessing college programs and services, and are committed to working towards strategies, tools, and actions to better support our Indigenous student population. In a commitment to build connections and opportunities for students to engage with design's visionaries, YES features a week-long lecture series. It's almost coming to an end. The design-focused speaker series has been cultivated in an effort to provide dynamic perspectives and unique discussion opportunities for members of our community, including students and faculty alike. Honest advice for designers from really good designers connects the School of Design with those who have impacted the industry on a local and global scale through a focused thematic-based lecture. This is followed by an opportunity for conversation and dialogue using the YouTube chat. So please feel free to relay all of your questions for Maurice there. Before I introduce Maurice, I wanted to take a moment for a quick giveaway, one of our last ones of the day, to the first person who signed up for today's talk, which is Jasmine Salang. Jasmine, you've won a copy of The Black Experience in Design, which features a chapter written by Maurice. So please send us a message on Instagram and we'll make sure to get you a copy of the book. With that, I would like to take a moment to introduce Maurice. Maurice Cherry is a designer, strategist, and podcaster located in Atlanta, Georgia. He's the principal and creative director at Lunch, an award-winning multidisciplinary studio that he created in 2008 that helps creative brands craft messages and tell stories for their targeted audiences, including fostering relationships with underrepresented communities. Maurice is a pioneering digital creator who's well known for Revision Path, an award-winning podcast, which is the first podcast to be added to the permanent collection of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. Other projects of Maurice's include the Black Weblog Awards, 28 Days of the Web, the Year of Tea, and the design anthology Recognize. Maurice holds a bachelor degree in mathematics from Morehouse College and a master's degree in telecommunications management from Keller Graduate School of Management. Welcome, Maurice. Moderating the Q&A portion of today's session is interaction design graduate Sabrina Crutan. Sabrina specializes in storytelling through conceptually driven experiences while keeping her projects grounded in research and collaborative partnerships. She uses her passion for human-centered design to focus on community building with the help of innovative technologies. Her and her group's capstone project, Neuro Airways, integrates 3D modeling techniques with front-end development to create a unique web experience for prospective passengers. Sabrina is an active member of the GBC design community as she is part of the Care for You team, which placed first in the IWB International Design Charrette, as well as being the inaugural recipient of the Experience Exchange by Huge Scholarship. With that, I'm pleased to turn over to Maurice, who will get us started with his presentation.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much for that, that great introduction. And of course, thanks to all of you for attending this year's year-end show. There have already been 3 days of great talks. Now you got me. But I'm opening for like the John Maeda later on today, so that's pretty cool. So far, you've heard about design during and after the pandemic, design ethics, accessibility, and storytelling. And today, on this last day of the year-end show, you get to really celebrate your hard work and dedication. So I'd like to give you just a little advice, if you'll let me, with my talk here, Advice for Designing at the End of the World. Now, spoiler alert, there's a little exaggeration in there, of course, from the title. But for a lot of you, this is the end of the world as you know it. Years of hard work and studying have brought you to this point. So I just want to kind of hip you to a few things I've learned over the past 20 years since I've graduated college and gone out there in the world. So hi, my name is Maurice Cherry, and I'm a designer, a podcaster, and a creative strategist. I started my studio Lunch in 2008 and ran it for 9 years doing web design, graphic design, and other services like consulting and podcasting. As Anna Rita mentioned, most people know me from my web projects, which you see here, the Black Weblog Awards, Recognize, the Year of Tea, Revision Path, and 28 Days of the Web. Aside from these projects, I've also held senior design roles at AT&T, at WebMD, and I've worked with tech startups both here in the US and internationally doing creative production and strategy work for the past 5 years now. So with all that said, this is advice for designing at the end of the world. But first, I have to give you a disclaimer. Please take all of this with a grain of salt, like any advice that you take in life. You know, my experience as an entrepreneur, a contract worker, as someone who has done everything from slinging chicken wings at 4 a.m. to presenting my thesis research to the Department of Defense at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, all that informs much of how I move through the world. I'm also a Black cisgender male of a certain age. I just turned 41, who grew up in the deep, deep South. So if you're not this exact combination of factors, some of this might not vibe with you, and that's okay. Part of design is about knowing what to use and what to disregard. So like I've done with so many chicken wings over the years, just eat the meat and spit out the bones. Now, I've divided this presentation up into 3 parts: work, life, and self. There may be some overlap just because we live in a capitalist society, but honestly, that's just how the world works these days. So let's start off. Design is a service profession. Now, you might be shaking your head about this, but for me, this is how I found purpose in even doing the most menial design tasks. Because if you think about it, design without service is just art, which is fine. If you want to be an artist, I think that's fine. But in my experience, I've encountered a lot of designers who think they're artists, and it's because they've abandoned the notion that what we do is a service. Whether you're a freelance designer with your own studio, or you're an in-house designer at an agency or a company, you're most likely working for someone else. You've got customers, you've got stakeholders, you've got coworkers. Your work has to talk to human beings. And listen, I know a lot of designers like to talk about clients from hell, and those do exist. Clients who just want to make your job harder. Time and experience will teach you to discern those from a mile away. Always get the money up front. Ideally, this is a deposit, something to secure the relationship between you and a client. But if you can get paid the full amount up front, go for it. 1, it holds you accountable to actually do the work, unless you're just a jerk, which is not cool. But 2, if you don't get any money up front, clients will magically disappear and you'll never hear from them again. It's a great magic act. Funny how that happens sometimes. Chasing checks sucks. Get paid before you do any design work. Don't fall into the trap of spec work. Now, this one is controversial, but I stand by it, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Don't charge by the hour. The problem that I have found with pricing by the hour is that the client is going to do the mental math to determine why they don't think you deserve to be paid that much for the work you do. Instead, price yourself for the problem that you're solving. This can be difficult if you're just starting out, so don't be afraid to deflect that back on a client and ask them what their budget is so you can know what type of solution to provide based on what they can afford. And if you have to give a rate by frequency, I think it's probably better to give a day rate, but don't break that down by the hour. They're paying for your time as much as they're paying for your talent. Freelancers and entrepreneurs, this one is definitely for you. Make your business fit your lifestyle. The happiest freelancers that I have encountered over the years are the ones that are not chasing someone else's definition for success. They found that sweet spot of making their business fit who they are as a person. It makes collaborations easier. It makes business easier. It makes life easier. You know, there's a saying that comparison is the thief of joy, and it can be easy to see what another freelancer is doing, think that it's cool, and try to emulate that. But if it doesn't really vibe with you and who you are, don't do it. Life is short. Email, text message, tweets, DMs, reply within 48 hours. Look, we're all busy. Life happens. I just saw a TikTok this morning where someone was bragging about having like 130,000 unread messages. I do not understand that at all. But look, you got to pay attention and respond. You'd be surprised how many opportunities you may be missing out on because you're not answering your emails or other messages. If you're one of those folks like this person in this TikTok that I saw that have hundreds of thousands of unread messages and notifications, I guarantee there's at least one check or one opportunity or something that you've already missed out on. Just don't leave people hanging. Don't be afraid to make a trade. This applies whether you're freelancing or working in-house somewhere. Sometimes bartering and trading as a designer can really help you out. In the early days of my studio, I would trade my design services with attorneys in order to get legal counsel and contract reviews. I would trade my design services with accountants for tax prep. I even traded my design services for conference tickets and such. Getting paid is nice, don't get me wrong, but if there's a way to trade your services for something that you need, don't hesitate to try it. You may have heard of Kyle McDonald. It's this guy, he did a TED talk about trading a paperclip for a house through a series of trades. Like he traded up to get to the house. I'm not saying you have to go out and try to trade a paperclip for a house, but just try it. Try bartering your services. The worst thing someone can say is no. Don't let your thinking be limited by your tools. Find the tools you need based on the method you need to solve the problem. I first encountered this back in 2009 when I kind of first started my studio. I was kind of just trying to find my way and find clients and stuff. And someone had contacted me and wanted to have a breakfast meeting with me at a Panera Bread. So we go to Panera Bread for the breakfast meeting. And this guy, he's a young guy, just graduated from business school, and he's trying to get into the web. And he asks me, should I learn HTML or should I learn Dreamweaver? Just to give you a sense of how long ago this was. It's funny looking back at it in hindsight. Me and him now are great friends. He's a great business person. But don't let your knowledge be limited by just what tool you think you need to solve that problem. Don't let your knowledge of UX be restricted by only using Sketch or Figma. Don't let your knowledge of coding only be restricted by using an IDE. I usually try to start with pen and paper for every project or problem that I have, and then figure out what methods or what research or tools that I need to use from there. Now, this is a quote by author and marketing expert Porter Gale, and it's so true. Your network is your net worth. The best opportunities that I've gotten in my career have not come from filling out a job application. It's been from my personal and my professional networks. Cultivate those relationships over the years. Reach out to people just because. Respond to comments from people you know, the good comments, that is. Don't just show up to your network when you need something. Eventually, people will get the hint. Your network could be mentioning your name and your work in places you're not even in, so keep those relationships fresh. Show your work. Remember math class? I love math. I have a degree in math, but remember being asked to like show your work when it came to equations and stuff? Hopefully that's not triggering anyone's math PTSD or anything. But when I say show your work, I mean have a public body of work that people can see. A website, preferably maybe an Instagram account or just something so that people can see, hey, this is the kind of work that I do. A public body of work is like a spider web that catches the attention of people looking for you. Now, you might work for a studio or you might work for a client in the future, and that work is under some kind of a non-disclosure agreement, especially if you work for like an ad agency. That means you can't show the project, you can't talk about the project. That's fine. Make a copy of it. Make something that is like the work that you've done, but not the actual work. The point is to get into the habit of showing your work and what you're doing. People want to see that activity from you. Zoom out, and I don't mean the video platform. Look at problems that you encounter from different perspectives. Look to the left, look to the right, turn it upside down, flip it over, zoom out from it. You may discover a new way to solve your problem just by looking at it in a different light or from a different angle. Now, this is something. Storytelling is sandwich making. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone's made a sandwich, right? A sandwich is interesting in that it's both an object and a method. Not only do you know what the end result looks like, you can visualize the entire thing from start to finish, and it's a procedure, and you know all the ingredients. To illustrate this, we're going to hear world-renowned radio and television host Wendy Williams describe a sandwich that she just ordered.
Hi. Oh my gosh. You got me at a good time because I just sent out for a sub. What do you call them? Heroes? Hoagies? I grew up calling them a sub. with a dip down on the U, a sub. I haven't had a sub in so long. I didn't order any wheat bread. I didn't order it from any place where it's pre-made. I ordered it from a real delicatessen. Genoa salami, liverwurst, full fat Swiss cheese. Might as well go there. I even asked them, how big is the sub? Because I'm a fat ass. I don't want this. I want this. I want it to be big. They said, it's about 14 inches. Perfect. I asked them to cut it, not straight, cut it on a slant. You see what I'm saying? Hold on, I'm not finished. Lettuce, iceberg lettuce, has no nutritional value at all, but neither does the sub. So let's go there. Tomato, onion, white, not red. Red is for salads, white's for subs. I'll handle my own salt and pepper here in my little tiny kitchen. I'll handle my own garlic, hot peppers, and then send some extra hot peppers on the side. Not finished. Oil and vinegar. I don't want the oil and vinegar that's in the same container and they go like this. I like the oil here and the vinegar here. You know why? I only like a little bit of oil. But I like the bottom piece of bread to be more wet with vinegar than the top piece. I didn't ask him for mayonnaise because I don't like to mess with the mayonnaise. I like Miracle Whip. Got my own in my little kitchenette. It has been years since I've had a sub. And
now, that's a great example of storytelling. She kept you on the hook from beginning to end. There's rules, there's structure, but like in those strict bounds, there's preferences. There's anticipation. Hold on, I'm not finished. There's personality. Miracle Whip, not mayonnaise. Cut on a slant, not straight. Onion, white, not red. Full fat Swiss cheese. When you think about storytelling, think of making a sandwich. It's a basic thing, telling a story. But like making a sandwich, you can always put your own unique spin on it. Try different ingredients. What personality can you add to it? Go crazy. But at the end of the day, make sure that people can stomach it. Discover your deepest values and serve those through your work. Now, this is how you really find your calling. This is how you find the thing that you are meant to do. It can be so easy to fall into a routine of working job after job because it's what you know how to do. It's what's been drilled into us. It's what your parents told you. It's probably what your teachers have told you. And you can follow that rat race, certainly, but do you love it? I mean, do you really even like it? Does it serve your deepest values? Spend time with yourself discovering what truly means the most to you and serve those values through your work. Life. Now, this is like a cheat code to life. Not only do people trust you more when you're genuinely kind, but being kind actually makes you smarter because people will be likelier to share their thoughts and privileged knowledge of things with you when you're kind to them. You know an easy way to be kind to someone? Give them compliments. Listen, people are a lot less certain of themselves than they might seem, especially in these days of social media. A compliment can go a long way. It never, ever hurts to be kind. Shout out to Tricia Hersey of the Nap Ministry for putting into practice the restorative power of rest. Now, I'm not saying you have to sleep your life away. When in doubt, though, take a nap. In this age of hustling hard and late stage capitalism, rest is a form of resistance. To say, you know what, I'm going to take a break and not do something for a while. Trust me, the work will still be there when you wake up. And if it's not, oh well. You would be surprised how many people do not frequent their local library. Now, I'm fortunate to have a branch in my neighborhood, but even going to the big central branch here in Atlanta, downtown, is a joy. First of all, free books. Now, you can be one of those people that are all, I only buy new books. But let me tell you something. The free used ones in the library have the same words as the new ones. Also, libraries often have ebooks, they've got audiobooks, online classes, magazines, newspapers, and they're quiet. A library is a staple of any thriving community because they're for everyone. There's no entrance fee. There's no waiting list, unless maybe it's for like a super popular book or something. And libraries also put you in close proximity with librarians who honestly, I think are heroes among men. Did I mention that libraries were quiet? There's not that many free quiet places that you can go to these days that also have their own entertainment. Get familiar with your local library. Now, when I say practice yoga, what I mean here is that you should try to be flexible when it comes to situations where you need to stretch yourself. This can be at work, this can be with a relationship, this can even be on a creative project. When you're flexible, you can respond to change. It builds up your resiliency. You learn to adapt to unexpected or sudden changes. Also, honestly, as you get older, you probably should actually practice a little yoga. Your body will thank you. Stay flexy. Now, if you've heard of the phrase work smarter, not harder, then you know about practicing JiuJitsu. JiuJitsu roughly translates from Japanese as yielding art, which is about manipulating your opponent's force against themselves rather than confronting it with your own force. It's maximum efficiency with minimum effort. For example, if something is bothering you, go ahead and take care of it right away. Don't wait. The problem is only going to get bigger. In life, you will encounter all kinds of opposing forces. Find a way to redirect or deflect that force. Or, actually learn jujitsu, the sport for self-defense of any kind. Be nice to the janitor, but not just the janitor. Be nice to the cashier. Be nice to the waiter. Be nice to your rideshare driver. This is about cultivating kindness, but it's also about just being mindful of the world around you. Every person has value. People ask me all the time through Revision Path about how to start a podcast. They've asked me for years how to start a business or how to start any kind of creative project that they want to do. And there's no big secret here. Just get started. The barrier to entry is a lot lower than you may think. And getting started really kind of helps rev the engine of motivation for you to continue. And look, give yourself permission to do it badly. The point is to just get started. You will learn as you go, just like everyone else in the history of the world has done. Show up. I've been seeing so many articles lately over the past couple of years about friendship. Mainly they talk about how hard it is to make new friends as an adult, which is true because everyone is really, really tired. Also, adult friendships, like all adult relationships, are highly conditional. The older we get, the more things we have vying for our time and for our attention. But I found that the easiest way to make new friends as an adult is to show up. If you want someone to show up for you, show up for them. Actions speak louder than words, and the love for your friends or other people has to show up in the form of actions in order for them to really perceive that love. This is especially the case for self-love. Show up for yourself too. Write it down. Kevin Kelly, he's the founding executive editor of Wired magazine. He once said that the biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I don't need to write this down because I'll remember it. And it's true. I write down things all the time. My wallet even has a mini notebook and pen in it so I can write things down on the go. The best hidden benefit of writing things down that I found over the years is that over time you will develop a body of work that will give you insights into yourself and the world that you cannot get any other way. You have a fleeting thought, write it down. You just had a major epiphany about something, write it down. You just heard a great quote, maybe one in this presentation, I don't know, write it down. You get the gist of what I'm saying here. Now, I almost put this slide in work, but this is in general overall life advice. Focus on the type of experience you want to have. Don't allow your life to be something that happens to you and not with you. Listen, we all have needs. We do. Honor those needs and focus on the type of experience you want to have, and I promise you will gain a new sense of clarity about life. It's worked for me. And I mean, I'm not really internalizing anything and not even really getting upset that much these days. Something happens and I'll just be like, oh, I want a different experience than that. and I move accordingly and with grace and with no malice. I'll give you an example. Around this time last year, I had just started working for a new company, and it was in the first week or so of working at that company, and I just did not like it. It was not a good fit for where I was in my career. I felt like I had made a mistake by signing on. What also happened during that week was that my grandmother had a stroke, and within that week, she had died. I went to my supervisor at the new job, starting on my second week, telling them what happened. And they told me that because I had just started, I didn't have enough bereavement time saved up in order for me to take work off and attend the funeral. And I just said, oh, this is not the experience I want to have with the job. So I quit. And I needed to quit because I needed to be there for my family. But this is what I mean about focusing on the type of experience that you want to have. It's just really gonna help you in life. That's all I can really say. Lastly, self. You should schedule one day a month for an online tune-up. Like, check your website, check and see if your bio is accurate, check and see if your contact form works, do your social media links work. You know, don't fall into the trap of checking your portfolio because you'll spend all day doing that. But just check the basic stuff. Is your LinkedIn up to date? Are the contact links on your LinkedIn correct? Go through your tweets, delete everything that makes you cringe in hindsight. Tweets are fleeting anyway. Nobody's really going to care. Same with Instagram, same with TikTok. Learn to actively audit your online presence. You never know what you might be missing out on. Now, this isn't my quote. This is from Kurt Vonnegut, but it's a good one. When things are going well, notice them. Simple things like just take a moment, step back. Gurus will call this mindfulness. The reality is that when you notice when you're happy, you will instinctively learn ways to cultivate that happiness when you need it. And it will definitely come in handy when you need it the most. Realize that you have a voice. Now, a few years ago, I used to do office hours for people. I'd set up time so people could ask me questions, advice, etc. And the one thing that kept coming up with everyone I spoke with was so much negative self-talk. I can't do this. I'm not good at this, blah, blah, blah. Some people might call that imposter syndrome. I don't believe in imposter syndrome. The reality is we will talk ourselves out of anything, oftentimes without saying anything at all. Don't boycott yourself, right? You have a voice. You have a point of view. You have something to say. Trust me, if you spend any time on Twitter, you will find that people have a lot to say about everything. Find your voice and use it. Now, this might fly in the face of an earlier piece of advice that I gave, but one piece that I've always kind of told people over the years is to always have like a little project or hobby or indulgence just for yourself. Don't try to monetize it. Don't offer it up for public consumption or adulation. It can be whatever you like, as long as it brings you joy, it's not hurting yourself or anyone else. Like, I'd tell you what mine is, but I'm keeping it to myself. Now, this is something that I've always done, but I gave myself permission to really amp this up during the pandemic. Cultivate a plethora of creative influences. You know, it's so easy to look at current pop culture and just see a plaid pattern of superhero movies, reality shows, and 10-episode series that will vanish from public view in the span of a weekend. Seek out different movies and TV shows to watch, not just new ones. Go check out some obscure 80s anime. Go to your local library and check out some books. Read a magazine you wouldn't normally pick up. Again, go to the library. It's free. You're not paying for anything. Each of these pieces of media will really help fill your creative tank and can come back to help you in a number of ways, especially when you're doing research on new projects. It just makes you a more well-rounded person when you know a little bit of something about a lot of things. Now, I don't know about you, but during this pandemic, it was incredibly tough for me to try to just plan for the future. I had some projects like Revision Path to kind of keep me going, and I attribute that to playing the long game when it comes to my work. It doesn't just apply to work, though. I mean, it applies to relationships. It applies to yourself. Build routines into your day. Create systems to make tasks easier. Set reminders for yourself to call people or for certain weekly or monthly tasks. These small things can help you get back more of your time and put you in a space to plan ahead when you need to. Listen, if you don't transform trauma, you will only end up transmitting it. You've made mistakes in the past. You've said something unkind to someone. You've made a stupid decision. You've probably acted recklessly without thinking. Congratulations, you're human. Forgiving yourself isn't just about putting the past behind you and moving on. Now, me saying forgive yourself is not carte blanche to be like a raging asshole, but it's a lot easier to do that in your 20s than in your 30s or your 40s or older. Forgiving yourself is really about compassion and acceptance, especially when you get older and look back on your life. Learn to forgive yourself. Treat that you that made that mistake with grace. Go outside and touch some grass. Seriously, log off, put on some clothes and shoes. Go outside and just stand still somewhere for 5 minutes. Don't bring your phone or any other distraction. Just think, breathe in the air. Literally touch some grass if you've got access to it. The point is to ground and remove yourself from all the chatter and noise online, because being always online can distort you to what's actually happening out in the real world. Life is out there worth living. This is the last piece of advice I have to give, and this is from George Lois, who is one of the most successful creative advertisers of the 20th century. He said the best way to divine your future, is to reinvent it. Not invent it, reinvent it. Look, we're going through tough times now. Look for unique ways to try to spark something new. When I was in college, the year before I graduated, I was set to work for NASA as part of my scholarship program. Then 9/11 happened. I was in study hall watching the planes crash into the towers when it happened. During that same month, my scholarship funding was pulled, and suddenly I was graduating with no job prospects at all. The plan that I had set up for myself to graduate college had just went up in smoke. No pun intended. So rather than sulk about it, I reinvented my future. I doubled down on this hobby of design that I picked up in my spare time. I taught myself the basic principles of design from reading design books, not just at the library for free, but also going to Barnes & Noble and just cracking open a book and staying there all day, and using a broken version of Photoshop that I downloaded from LimeWire or something. When I quit my job in 2008, I was at the height of the recession back then. I invested in myself and I started my own studio. How will you reinvent yourself during this time? Opportunity is out there for you. And that's just, little advice from me to you about designing at the end of the world. I know I covered a lot, so I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have. I just want to once again thank you, George Brown College, for having me, and let's open it up for some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maurice. Definitely learned a lot that can be applied not only now, but in the future. You talked about focusing on the experiences you want to have during your presentation, and I thought that was very enlightening. We know that you're very busy, not alone with your studio work as well as your side projects. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll start off with a couple of my own questions, but if anyone from the audience has questions, please drop them in the chat and we will get to them. So during your presentation, you said to realize that you have a voice. And I find this particularly difficult, especially as a new grad and a young designer. So do you have any advice for people in my position that are coming in as juniors into the workforce?
I have to say, I think that, the perspective of coming into the industry as a junior is something that gets overlooked a lot. Because a lot of the advice that gets thrown around and gets shared a lot is often by senior people in the industry. For people, I guess I can lump myself in with that, but from people that have been out there for a while and have accomplished great things. And a lot of that can be really inspirational and motivational, but if you're just starting out, it may not speak to you in that same way. I would say if you're just starting out, talk about that experience. Talk about what it's like entering, the workforce now. Talk about what it's like applying for jobs, putting your portfolio together, because that perspective is not really shown a lot. What you have are people that have already walked the road and weathered the storm 10, 20, 30 years ago, trying to tell you now in this current time how to do things. And you may find that there's a disconnect there because the world is just a different place. Technology was not as prevalent then as it is now. It's different. It's just different. I find this out particularly like when I talk to my goddaughters. One of them is 9 years old, and like her perspective of the world is so much different from me at 41. Like I can't really give her a lot of advice on stuff because it's like you're a child, one, but two, the world that you grew up in, you've never not known technology. You've never not known a different time than where you are now. So I would say if you're just starting out and you're really trying to find your voice, talk about what it's like starting out, because I guarantee you for a lot of us that have been in the industry for a while, we've kind of forgotten that.
That's great advice, to kind of lean into the fear and as opposed to run away from it. It's just one last question from me. Mm-hmm. So you are an absolute powerhouse. I was trying to look you up, and you have had over 400 podcasts for your own podcast alone, let alone interviews, articles. You're everywhere. So you've had a number of passion projects throughout your career, including your podcast Revision Path and 28 Days of the Web. So my question is, how important is it to pursue these passion projects for R&D as a designer and creator?
I think it's super important because, it's interesting what interviewing has done for me in general has allowed me, one, I think the opportunity to really learn and talk to anyone. And that was something that I was even able to take right back into my business when it came to trying to find new clients. Like the same sort of anxiety or nervousness or skill that it takes to interview someone for a podcast is pretty similar to that same anxiety or skill from like walking up to someone at a networking mixer or at a restaurant or, wherever, at a conference. So it did kind of give me that, I guess that sort of superpower to be able to talk to someone. And I think to be able to learn how to ask the right questions, not just ask questions. I think, we can all ask questions. What interviewing has allowed me to do, and I would say with these side projects in particular, is learn how to ask the right questions to get what it is that you want. Like I sort of alluded to in the presentation, it's always been good for me to have something that's just my own, that is not subject to a lot of outside approval or anything like that, which is not to say that Revision Path or these other projects have been solely singular private ventures, because they're out there in the world. But what it's also given me is a lot of just confidence, because I think when you're working at you're working at an agency, you're working for a studio, even when you're working for yourself, it can be hard to kind of know if you're really doing a good job, if you don't hear it from your coworkers, if you don't hear it from your clients. You can just kind of go through your career pretty singularly, not getting feedback. And what these projects have kind of shown me is that, one, you don't necessarily have to have that feedback, but when you get it, you kind of know what it looks like. Like you notice what I also said in the presentation, like noticing when you're happy, you notice when those times come a lot easier, and you're able to use that to kind of sustain yourself. Because I'm not going to say that my life is always just a series of highs. There's highs and lows. Everyone has that. Yeah. But noticing when those lows happen and being able to kind of draw on that reserve that I've built up from doing these singular projects has been just monumental for my overall quality of life.
That's great. So like learning from your mistakes and trying to always get the high, but realizing the lows will come.
Yeah. And realizing also, just like I said in the presentation, like everyone in the history of the world has done this. Like we've all had to start something new, or we've all started at something and done badly at it, but then gotten better. So just knowing that what I'm doing is what other people time immemorial have done is a bit humbling in a way. So I think that also helps too.
That's great. Thank you. We're going to go to the audience questions now. So Juliana says, Maurice, how to remain optimistic when all opportunities seem so far away, especially when you're getting out of college and getting into the job market?
That's a good question. The interesting thing about the pandemic is that it has, in some ways, for some companies, allowed them to really expand where they find talent. Because, I'd say maybe 2 years or so ago, we weren't congregating in offices and things like that. So people had to learn how to work remotely. And now 2 years later, working remotely is pretty common, whether it's in a hybrid situation or you're working fully remote. What I'm hearing, I think, from the question is that you said how to remain optimistic when all the opportunities seem so far away. what I'm hearing is that maybe you want more local opportunities and you're not maybe looking to tap into the kind of opportunities that might have you working remotely. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that, but that's kind of what I'm sort of getting from the question. I know here in Atlanta, for example, like the design market here is, it's okay. I'm not going to say it's great. There are a lot of, I think, introductory opportunities, but there are also a lot of great remote work opportunities. I think when you're just starting out, it kind of would help, I think, to be flexible about what some of those remote opportunities may be that allow you to have a different quality of life than working somewhere locally. I don't know. I hope I'm not misreading the question I think it was the optimistic part that got me, because I think the good thing now is that because so many companies have opened themselves up to allow talent from everywhere, that's kind of widened the aperture a bit in terms of where you can find opportunities. But if you want to, I guess, remain local or at least working locally, that's a good question. So when I first started my studio, I'm going to try to answer this the way that I hope you want me to answer this. When I first started my studio, this was back in 2009, and there was not a lot of remote work. You worked where you lived, period. And I would go to a lot of like meetups for designers, right? I'd go to design meetups, web design meetups. And what I quickly found is like, these are the worst places to find work because everyone else there is also trying to find work. What I need to do is go to the places where there are people that have work for me. So I ended up going to like business mixers or business meetups. And so in those instances, I'm maybe the only designer or so in the room. I can network and say, oh, well, here's my card, check out my website, etc. Now they remember you as like the designer person that was at my business meetup. So it basically allowed me to put myself in situations where those decision makers were, that would allow me to sort of garner these opportunities that I need to build my studio, to get clients, to get revenue, et cetera, or even to get jobs. Sometimes, I think it's gotten a little better now with some designer meetups, maybe because we haven't really been meeting up as much. Like I see a lot of virtual spaces, Discord servers, Slack groups, et cetera, that are thriving with opportunities. Now, a lot of those opportunities are remote work opportunities, but I think as we're starting to, I don't want to say get out of the pandemic, but I think as we're starting to scale on, as we're trying to sort of go on with the pandemic and people have been vaccinated and such, particularly in metropolitan areas, the push has been to get back out there in the world in some way. And so maybe some of these spaces are a bit more accommodating for that. I hope I answered your question. I feel like I may have misinterpreted what you said, but I hope I was able to answer your question.
Thank you. And also thank you for the hot tip in going to business mixers as opposed to design mixers, because you will be probably one of 5 designers there and 1,000 business people. We have a next question from Jasmine. Hi, Maurice. What has been the most challenging lesson to learn in our journey of designing at the end of the world?
I think the most challenging lesson for me to learn has been to honestly just treat people with well, I don't want to say it's been challenging for me to learn so much. I was going to say the challenging thing is to kind of treat people with grace. I think certainly as the pandemic started, a lot of people were just trying to accommodate this new way of living, whether it was working remotely or trying to fall into some schedule of this is when I work, this is when I don't work, trying to get into that. And even as that happened, there would still be the sort of unyielding push of work to say, well, I need this by this date and I have to have this right away. And it's like, you don't have to have this right away. You want it right away. You don't have to have it right away. Not everything is as urgent as people seem. And I think as folks started out working remotely, that really got lost a bit, because maybe the supposition is that, well, you're working from home, therefore you're able to work 24 hours a day, which is not true. I think that that's been a challenging lesson probably for a lot of people to learn, is that you have to kind of give yourself kind of these strict demarcations between work and not work, especially if it's in your same physical space. Now, if you can go to a co-working space and really try to separate work from where you sleep, that's great. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. But I think that's been probably the most challenging lesson for a lot of people is when to turn it off, when to say, you know what, I'm done for the day. Like, I've worked for places where I'll tell them, like, look, I work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. At 4:01, you will not see me. I am logged off of the Slack. My laptop is closed. I put it in my closet for the next day. Like, I don't even want to physically see work at the end of the workday. And I'll say, if it's that important, I'll get to it tomorrow. And honestly, most of the time it is. There's rarely anything that's like, I need you to log on at 9 p.m. and do this work. No, you don't. It's 9 p.m. Nobody, no. Even if you're working across time zones, maybe if you're working for someplace it's like 10 or 11 hours in the future, perhaps. But I think that's been the biggest thing to kind of learn is like, not everything is so urgent. Learning when to kind of set those boundaries for work and not work has been a challenging thing. I have to set those strict boundaries for myself because I know that I also have other work to do after work. Like, after I get off work, I record the podcast. Like, I record the podcasts roughly 2 hours a night when I have free time during weekdays. But I also will say, after 4 p.m. on Friday, you can't reach me. I'll talk to you on Monday. Like, Friday and the weekend is for me. So most people understand that.
That's great. Like you were saying, I think a lot of people have that issue, just making those lines. And even in your presentation, you made a work, self, and
life.
Thank you very much. Life. You even divided your presentation that way. And it's interesting that you're saying that you're still learning, because I know that you've been working remotely for over a decade. So you're still learning the process of working remotely.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that so many people now have kind of caught up to it, which is why I feel like I'm still learning, because they're still learning. And so, like, for example, at one place where I worked, one of the folks who I worked with was sort of a kind of digital nomad type. So in one instance, we might be in the same time zone, but then the next day they're suddenly 3 hours ahead. And then next week, now they're going to be 6 hours behind me or something. So it's like, it's still that bit of learning of like, okay, how do I adjust to that when it feels like you're working with a moving target in a way. So becoming really good with time zone math has been helpful.
Yeah, you even mentioned in previous interviews, like you time shift everything. So like you'll write the email, but then time shift it to send it.
Yeah. I try, like I'll have, so email, that's another thing. I set up like a bunch of filters. So all my email mostly comes into my main address, but then I've got like a folder for newsletters, a folder for bills, a folder for like orders, stuff like that. So if there's something I really need to check, I can just do that. Or I can say, oh, I know I don't need to read all this. I can just, mark all as read. But I time shift a lot of emails to go out when either I'm sleeping or to send while I'm working. So that way, it still kind of keeps the regular flow of things without me having to completely break my focus and then do this other thing. I can set it up where I think of current me and future me. And so I'm like, oh, well, future me knows I need to answer this by 9 a.m. tomorrow. So current me is going to write the email at 11 p.m. before bed and just set it to send while I'm at work at 9 a.m. in the future. So then that way I don't have to like think about it, Yeah,
that's great advice. Just going back to another question. So Mary says, hi, Maurice. Thank you for this lovely talk. Do you have any favorite designs, reads you could recommend?
I do. The Black Experience. No, okay. Actually, no. That is actually probably the best design read that and this is, a bit of self-promotion, but the Black Experience in Design, which is the book that Anna Rita mentioned at the beginning of my talk that was given for a giveaway. That book just came out in February. It's a red book. I think it's roughly about maybe 600 or so pages. I've really been digging through it. Like I have one essay in there, but as I've read through it, it has been probably one of the most enthralling reads about design that I have ever had. Like it's because it's divided into different sections on like scholarship and education and things like that. And you hear so many different people's perspectives. I mean, the thing is, I think the title might throw people off because they may say, oh, the Black experience, and they might look as Black as a monolithic thing. But there's so much variety across age and discipline and geography and sexual orientation, etc., that make it just so compelling. Like I'm picking it up. I'm going through it ferociously with my highlighter. It is such a good read. I would highly recommend it. Not just saying that because I'm in it. I think it is a must read for anybody in design.
That's great. Thank you. Just one of my questions. So I've read in print magazine that your best advice for designers was to be nice, and you definitely alluded to that in your life section during your presentation. But considering your talk today was about advice for designing at the end of the world, what can you tell designers to still have such a positive and a friendly outlook in today's world?
Woo! That's a lofty one. It's, I'm not, when I say, I think there's a difference between being nice and being positive. I want to set that out there first. I do think it is important to be nice because it doesn't cost you anything, like I've said in the presentation. And just being a jerk doesn't get you far. Like nobody wants to work with that person. You're going to be the person everyone's talking about negatively. Like, don't be that person. Being positive, ooh, that's tough. That's tough. Ways that I stay positive. I go to therapy. I go to therapy twice a month. That helps a lot just to like get stuff out of my head. I also keep a private journal where and it's a voice journal, so that's even better. I just do it on my phone and I just blurt out what I have to say. It stays in my phone. No one else knows about it. And other things to stay positive, I kind of try to live a lot by my calendar. So I will schedule in, I guess you could call it like moments of joy, I guess. But I will schedule my free time in my calendar so I have something to look forward to. I think it's that anticipation to do something that you want to do that kind of, for me at least, keeps me going like through a hard work week. Because I know at the end of the week, I've got, I don't know, a 6-pack of hard cider in the fridge. and it's me and that 6-pack for the rest of the weekend. Like it might be something like that. Not saying you have to drink, but I schedule those kind of like future moments of joy. And I just try to build up my anticipation for those things to try to keep positive. I mean, I would say also, one thing that I really try to do is curb my news intake. So I only listen to the news in the morning. I actually have it it's like on my phone. It's like you can tell Google to like play the latest news. Hopefully that doesn't trigger anyone's Google device, but it will read out the news from like NPR, AP News, Reuters. I get the Daily. I think I get another NPR show, and it does that for 1 hour as I'm getting ready for work, and that's it. I won't look at the news after that. I won't pull the news up. If I'm on social media, you'll find that news will kind of just come in, but I also try to limit my news intake because a lot of media is built around tension. It's built around putting things out there to get you to react. At least modern media is, I will say, whether that's movies, television, news, etc., because tension equals engagement. And so I try to limit a lot of my news intake because I know that tension is that only that's going to do is wind me up. It's going to have me doom scrolling at 1 a.m. So I try to really limit when I sort of take in the news. And I do it like right first thing in the morning, and then I just let it go for the rest of the day.
That's great. More sage advice from Maurice Cherry. So I think that's unfortunately all the time we have today. Thank you everyone for joining us in this talk with Maurice Cherry. If you are interested in joining us for our final talk of our speaker series, that's later today with John Maida at 3 p.m., please sign up at yes.schoolofdesign.ca. Thank you again, Maurice, and can't wait to listen to who you interview next.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, next week is episode 450. Milestone episode. Thank you all again so much for having me. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you.